Here we have some of the earliest equipment in the museum, some of the rarest, and that's early wireless equipment made by Marconi and others of the literally as early as you can get, 1900 to 1905, 1910 time frame. Very, very rare items. So we have the Marconi Cohere of 1905. Marconi, of course, had companies in England, U.S., and Canada, separate corporations. So some of these are Marconi of England, some are Marconi of U.S. But some of the very earliest equipment is right here, very rare. And just between you and me and the other docents and what have you, this probably gets the least amount of people's interest. People tend to be interested in things that they can relate to. So if people remember in their childhood, wow, we used to have a 1949 set like that, or yeah, we had a radio that looked like that. I can remember cranking a telephone. Those are the things that people relate to. When we have historians in, they're poring over this stuff. But the general public on Saturdays and Sundays, it's pretty interesting that the earliest things are the least interesting to them. These items, this, and this, are items that have been restored by members. We call it the Adopt a Radio program, and during the annual convention we'll allow people to come in the annex and look over radios we have on display that need to be restored. We're a little selective, of course, about who we select or who we allow to take a radio, but if we know their capabilities and what have you, they'll take radios and take them home, restore them, and bring them back, and then we put them on display for the following year. So these are all radios that have been restored by different members. So it's kind of a win-win situation. The members get a chance to work on a radio they would normally not be able to do, plus the museum makes out that we get nice restored equipment. In this cabinet we have pretty much more of the same of the Marconi era, except for this one. But down here we have different varieties of some early receiving equipment. Not a lot to tell about them. They don't have a lot of stories, but it is very interesting, very early gear that people can look at. This is a standard TRF 3 dialer, but the unusual thing about it is that it's built in a glass case. And some people thought that was, the magic thing to make radios work better, but it didn't. Over here, we're starting around in this area is the military equipment, mostly World War II, but we do have a World War I aircraft spark transmitter, very rare. This is used by spotting aircraft, artillery spotters in aircraft. So they would fly over and watch and see how the artillery was doing and transmit information, up, down, whatever the artillery people needed to do. They could only transmit, again, they had no receivers, so they could only transmit information. This is a typical of a spy transmitter and receiver of World War II, used by British agents and friends of British agents. Very effective, about a 20-watt transmitter. Cute little CW key. and they would carry these all over Europe, transmitting information. This is a Model 19 set, all of the parts in the bottom, and those are used in Russian tanks. Kind of an interesting history because they were designed by the British, manufactured by the U.S., but used by the Russians. So a true cooperative effort there. Interesting is that the labeling is in both English and Russian. A lot of those made. These are very typical aircraft, World War II aircraft, transmitters and receivers. Another larger aircraft transmitter for long haul, hundreds of miles communications. So this transmitter and this receiver were used in B-29s and other large bombers. Over here we have a vacuum tube display. The tube display here at the AWA is very, very good, mainly because one of our founders, Bruce Kelly, personally liked tubes. So he collected a lot of very nice vacuum tubes. We're very fortunate to have two of the very earliest tubes. The very first tube ever was the Fleming valve on the left, and that was a diode. It could only be used as a detector. It took Dr. Lee DeForest in 1906, 1907 to come up with a triode vacuum tube, one that could amplify, and once you could amplify, then of course that opened up a whole new era of modern electronics, if you will. Tube that could amplify, oscillate, and just started the whole revolution in vacuum tube technology. We're very fortunate in having both of those here. Very, very rare items. Here you'll find a list on top of the cabinet, and there's numbers here that associate with numbers on the tube. And so if we were to look here, for example, just pick any one, tube number 5. Here, you look here, number 5, and you find out that's a Marconi, another Fleming valve, called the erect configuration. So people who are interested in detail are certainly welcome to look through that. As we move through the aisle here, we have a display of early Heathkit items. Heathkit amateur gear, vacuum tube voltmeter, which made them famous, of course, and the first Heathkit, which is this model K2 all-wave radio. This is embodied the success of the Heathkit company, in that all of the parts are World War II surplus. These are surplus tubes that are right out of that World War II receiver. All of the parts are World War II surplus. So Heathkit made its business on buying carloads of World War II surplus equipment and then deciding what can we do with it. So that's basically how the Heath got started. This is a Lutz receiver, which is the world's largest super heterodyne. So it took both of these units to make one radio. Performance was okay, but not that great. But boy, look at this. We could spend days tuning this radio. It looks like the very rare, very unusual Lutz super het. And when you get all done, you needed an audio amplifier to make it loud enough to operate with a loudspeaker.